A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We have a lot of things going on today, as we already have some people chiming in. Ronaldo Rivera saying, here I is, and there you are. And here we are to talk about many things. I have often said that we got jam-packed shows for you, and I think we all had an expectation that as we get closer to, say, next week with those, couple of next weeks with those couple of incredibly important times coming up. I guess technically end of this week if you want to be pedantic about it. But, well, things are already reaching what I feel like would be pretty fair to say is a bit of a fever pitch when it comes to, well, let's just list out a few issues. Of course, the election and the voter turnout, muddling along, if not like objectively good, better than we've seen recently, as also the amount of money being spent on it. Some more insight coming out on that. But then definitely the major focus we're just going to be having today, spoiler alert, on immigration and border security issues, as we have a number of, coming from all levels of government, let's put it that way, responses to that anticipated end of Title 42 and all of the federal pandemic era policies, as we have states, local, federal responses coming in, including notable disagreements from across the spectrum when it comes to that, even within locally, some notable disagreements between the city and the county now on things like the no camping ordinance, what is going to be expected to come to the border here, the stuff happening across state lines as well, with more response and more please slash I'll leave it up to y'all to decide how you want to describe it, of the busing out of our area. Governor Greg Abbott typing a letter back to Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, among other things. So there's a lot of this going on, but also today our interview going to be with El Paso Inc. editor Robbie Gray, talking about some of the big stories and, of course, in-depth reporting in our area related to some of these things, but in the different ways they've also been focusing on them, as well as just some of the important business things that are continuing to go on, even in the background when it is on this, including the marijuana business, downtown revitalization, and investment going into some new things coming out, shakeups at the top of some major locally based businesses, as well as, Title 42, Proposition K, those debates, those parts of it. Again, there's a whole lot to go on today, and I'll be surprised if we manage to squeeze it all in, to be perfectly honest with you. So I already got comments coming in. John Browselton also chiming in over there with some dark predictions about the downtown looking like a war zone. I'm not going to agree with that idea of it, but we're certainly going to be facing some challenges in our region and in our specific area. So let's just dive straight into it. As you may have heard technically a couple of times at the top of the hour there is let's start at the top and work our way down here. Of course, with the end of Title 42, with all of the other pandemic related policies anticipated at the, again, May 11th date that we're looking at, from the Associated Press and many others already today, it's coming out that Biden to send 1,500 military troops to U.S.-Mexico border the day before May 10th. And of course, that will include this specific area, but there have been already a lot of expectations on this. The expected use of them will be going towards the back end duties, the administrative, the transportation, non-law enforcement, basically. So the idea is to free up those that are sworn officers, federal law enforcement officers, etc., CBP, Border Patrol, etc., in order to be able to continue doing their duties. So that won't just be to our area, that's along the entirety of the border, but as has been said, it is expected that there will be a presence in our area. You may be wondering, weren't they already here? But in that case, the previous ones, including the picture that is up from our news partners over at KFOX 14, the picture they show of troops that are actually on the front of it near the concertina wire that had been strung, those were Texas National Guard troopers. So different sources coming from this. So that'll be a different part of it. Now, going to the statewide level of it, of course, we had previously, and this came up yesterday, I do believe some people chiming in also on our transmitter and equipment there. I'll certainly pass that along, but also on the request that was coming out of some other national locations, specifically Chicago. Again, Mayor Lori Lightfoot up there saying, calling the governor to halt transportation of migrants to Chicago, and Governor Greg Abbott responding to that today. And just reading from his tweet on this, the full letter. It says, today I sent a letter to Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot advising her to call on President Biden to address the border crisis. Until the Biden administration secures the border, Texas will continue transporting migrants to sanctuary cities. Not at all surprising. Again, there's absolutely, and as mentioned, there's a political aspect to it as well. Even if in our local area, I think that the primary focus is on the functional part of it. But just to read from the first paragraph or so of Governor Abbott's letter to the mayor of Chicago, saying Governor Greg Abbott today advised Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot to call on President Joe Biden to secure the border in response to her request that Texas stop transporting migrants to her self-declared sanctuary city. In a letter to Mayor Lightfoot, the governor reminded her of the necessity of Texas's busing strategy to provide much-needed relief to overwhelmed small border communities amid the Biden administration's growing border crisis. Quote, if you want to work together to find a real solution to this border crisis gripping our nation, you must call on the Biden administration to do its job by securing our border, repelling the illegal immigrants flooding into our communities, classifying the Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, and intercepting the deadly fentanyl that is endangering our country, reads the letter, end quote. So there's a lot more of that. You can find that for yourself over on Twitter, among other things. But that's just some of the kind of from the national now to the statewide level on that. And then the statewide impact on the local is leading to at least some of the disagreements that are going on. From our news partners today, or earlier this morning, I should say, from our news partners at KFOX 14, county judge disagrees with the city's response to migrant surge in El Paso. Now, part of this is based on both on the no camping declaration that has been put forth. That's also questions have been coming up about how exactly that's being enforced, because there have been numerous videos going around on social media that I and others associated with us have seen and taken themselves, certainly about maybe not camping, but a lot of people on the streets, and it may not be tents, which may or may not be a good thing. I'm not really sure how that one breaks down. I mean, this isn't November. It's not so much as the cold weather thing, but I mean, shelter is still a necessary thing. We do get down into cold temperatures, and last night, at least in my neck of the woods, was a little bit of a hairy one. I think we got a little bit of rain, those kind of things going on. So again, I'm not sure whether just not having tents or not satisfied the urban camping or the camping within city limits part of what the city has been talking about. But I mean, among other things, the Red Cross has been offering assistance to El Paso shelters, among other things. And so again, a lot going on down around specifically South Central El Paso, Segundo Barrio. So getting further into what the county judge, Ricardo Samaniego, had to say is that he does not agree with the way that the city of El Paso, including that no camping ordinance, saying, quote, I know there might be some enforcement for which I'm not for, because you want to have them in a certain place because you can communicate with them. You're able to have this relationship with them. Otherwise, they could go all over the city. I've always said if we can keep them in downtown areas, we can work with them. We can talk with them. Remember, they're coming in with a lot of false information, end quote. And they also, of course, the state of disaster declaration that has been made by the mayor of El Paso, Oscar Leeser, already. Basically, the county judge also disagreeing with that because of, saying it's not going along with the strategy, but more specifically, the fact that it then allows more stepping in by the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, saying, quote, remember, the moment that there's a declaration that opens up the governor to enforce whatever he wants, to send militia to do whatever he needs to do, and I'm not willing to do that. The county commissioners did meet yesterday to discuss Title 42 and what's going on there. There was no action taken on that. There have been previously, I will note, efforts by the county side specifically to petition for increased additional prepayment of funds from FEMA and all of other things like that. So that's some of what's going on. And the county specifically asking for help from the public, saying, quote, right now, what we need is volunteers because we're able to open some sites and get them going. The problem is we don't have the number of people to be able to manage these sites. So that's some of what's going on related to all of these issues. But again, we are still, more than a week out, week and 2 days, let's call it that to be fair, of the actual ending of Title 42. And among other things, again, that migrant crisis dashboard that keep a pretty constant watch on to see what's going on with it. We are seeing continued increases of numbers and of they're in custody, of encounters, of a 7-day rolling average going on. So there's a lot of issues surrounding this, and I'm sure that I have a firm suspicion in any case that we're going to continue talking about this, and more things will continue to develop as we get closer to May 11th itself, even if we are still seeing, among other things, is noted by our news partners at KFOX 14. As of this week, Border Patrol seeing 134% increase of migrant encounters this fiscal year compared to 2022, and some the reporting outlets in town saying that some of what they're seeing in and around the, particularly again, South Central El Paso, Segundo Barrio area is more than have been seen even in previous such incidents, even of the 6 months ago. So that's a lot going on there, but we're already due for that first break right now. Some comments coming in, including Flaco Jimenez saying, I read somewhere that Biden is planning on putting 1,500 troops on the border, hopefully to enforce laws and not for babysitting duties. That is true, the 1,500, but they will be primarily doing the back end work, not law enforcement duties. So essentially no to the second part of what you're talking about there. John Brazelton kind of saying that they're only going to be for show, no power to do anything. Again, I'm kind of okay with law enforcement doing the law enforcement part of it, but I will also say that, that's not just to our area. That's going to be across the entire southern border area, but hopefully deployed to the hotspot areas, I'm sure. But yeah. And then Sean Gardner responding, saying that Samaniego is a NIMBY, not in my backyard politician. That's why he wants them downtown, and personally thinking they should move to his neighborhood specifically. And again, we're getting kind of into maybe some of the national busing issues and back and forth that comes with it. And yeah, Sean Gardner bringing up the idea that technically active duty troops deployed within our borders is illegal, posse comitatus, among other things. So we've seen previous such efforts during both Biden, Bush, and I think a little bit during the Obama administration, if I'm not mistaken, and of course during the Trump administration. But the use of it as a back end and essentially support personnel has had some different connotations. So, there's a lot more to go on to and discuss when it comes to these things. But let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Again, coming out of this break, we're going to be talking more about the issues that affect us here in El Paso, and specifically visiting with Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., when it comes to what is going on with some of these related issues. Also, that little election thing that's going on in our region. Yeah, that's a thing that we've been talking about quite a bit. Some more on the groups and the money being spent by them on the campaigns related to this, as well as a lot more business implications of just stuff going on because the world keeps spinning otherwise. So let's go ahead and take that next break right now. You are tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff that we'll be talking about as the rest of the show continues on. Phone calls a little bit later, but in any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Slow traffic on the I-10 eastbound right now from Trans Mountain through downtown to the 54 Patriots, a 7-minute delay. Just one injury accident to look out for northbound McCombs at Dyer. Watch for DPS activity, Border Highway westbound at the Yarborough exit. And stop-and-go traffic, Global Reach is slow. 30-minute delays from the Spur down to Montana Avenue. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
How could $1,000 change your life?
I could buy eggs.
Then listen for inflation compensation. Your chance to win $1,000 to combat high prices.
Honey, we're going to have eggs.
Yes, it's excellent. Be listening for your chance to win $1,000 with inflation compensation.
Listen for your chance to win $1,000 every hour, 9 through 5 p. with the inflation compensation on News Radio 690 AM. Brought to you by Charlie Clark Nissan and Charlie Clark Infinity of El Paso.
The
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
Are you tired of your kids being indoctrinated in school? I'll talk to a mom who's doing something about it. Listen to The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday and Thursday, but you can listen throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you find your podcasts.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the Borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
There are more identity threats than you realize. Even if you monitor your credit, only a little personal info needs to leak out, like your social security number or password,
for you to become a victim.
LifeLock alerts you to threats you could miss. If your identity is stolen, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions, but everyone can save up to 25% off their first year with promo code NEWS. Go to lifelock.com.
So, I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in. However you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments and other things coming in there, including Eric von Holstein-Rathlow on the Facebook with the wave. Hello to you as well, and a lot of other conversations, those dropping those likes and reacts already, including Alex Campos, Monica Cervantes, Sean Gardner, Robbie Flores, Flaco Jimenez, and James Holmes. Do appreciate that. It helps us with all those algorithmic things. Phone calls a little bit later, though. We did have comments come in over the break, basically saying that Title 42 should not go away. We've talked about that a little bit previously, that there's no real path forward for that to continue at this point. At the very least, not a simple, no, it's going to stay now, because Title 8 does exist after that, the one that is not an immediate removal order, but can be an expedited one towards it. It's a different process overall, but if it were to stay around, it would be the only federal pandemic-era policy that would be doing so. And so the issues that would come up with that, and potentially the reinstatement of the Supreme Court case that was dismissed because it was rendered moot based on the federal decision on it, it wouldn't be that simple, I guess, is the point I'm trying to get at here. But that's part of what we're talking about today. But we are joined now, as we are most first Tuesdays of the month, by Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., to talk more about this and the other things that are directly affecting us in the area. So thank you very much for joining us today.
It's good to be here, Andrew.
Happy to have you on to break down some of these things. And I do feel the need to point out for those of us, those who are not in our online audience, seeing the video there, that you do have your I voted sticker on you. So we do have a tradition we do need to keep of those who have voted and let us know on this show. Thank you for voting.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Absolutely. So you have because it is the last day of early voting, and we're going to talk more about Prop K, but just a little bit more on, the end of Title 42, the May 11th anticipation date. You all have been doing some reporting on some of these specific non-governmental organizations. Opportunity Center for the Homeless, among others specifically, that you all have been speaking with about their situations and what's been going on with them already.
Yeah, frankly, it feels like Groundhog Day. Here we are again with these migration issues as they were expected. And, as we're talking to business groups and seeing reaction to this, what I hear most is sort of that frustration and a wish that Congress might act to update the country's immigration system. But in the meantime, we we have this issue. So one of the members of our news team went down to Sacred Heart and took some video there. And yeah, I mean, you look at it. There's a few blocks down there that are once again basically the sidewalks are kind of full of migrants bundled, trying to find some shelter and support there. Even as you know, back last week, the Opportunity Center for the Homeless here in El Paso put out a call for help, and you know that was last week, and it's only gotten worse.
Yeah, we've seen, again, even just based on the data and the numbers that we do have in hand. Again, I'll always refer people over to the city's migrant crisis dashboard, elpasotexas.gov/migrant-crisis. We have been seeing, I mean, the CBP encounters and in custody 7-day rolling averages not back at their within like the last year high water marks, but creeping back up towards them. And again, this is all before even that much anticipated May 11th end of Title 42 has occurred. So that's part of what's going into this. Specifically, you do also have a statement that has come out recently, if not as of today, from the Borderplex Alliance, kind of relating to more on the business side of this as well, right?
Yeah, that's the most recent thing I've seen. So the Borderplex Alliance, that's that private sector led group that does business recruitment and such. It's a business group, and they did release a statement here this afternoon about Biden deploying the National Guard to the southern border, sort of beefing up the numbers that are here and sort of backup roles. And I'll read a portion of it here. So Borderplex Alliance says President Biden's decision to deploy active duty troops to the southern border serves as a reminder that our country needs a permanent solution to the ongoing humanitarian crisis and sends the wrong message to the American people. El Paso, one of the safest communities in the United States, is not a war zone. The Borderplex region is a powerful engine of economic growth and opportunity. So that's sort of the general sentiment I've heard from the business community about this situation.
I mean, yeah, El Paso has at various different points and various different issues. A lot of them end up involving border and border security, immigration issues, dealt with issues about considerations on what goes on here in the U.S. side of the border anyway. And so I could see that fitting into that same vein. But speaking of business concerns, I mean, we're going to continue talking about Title 42, the projected end of it, and the May 11th as we get closer to it, as I'm sure y'all will continue reporting on it. But in the meantime, again, as the world continues spinning around this, even if this is going to take up quite a lot of the air in the room in terms of news coverage, we have another issue that has been previously doing that significant oxygen draining, and that is of Title 42, but of Proposition K on that May 6th election ballot. Is again, you voted today, and we do have the end of early voting going on now-ish, depending on y'all's location. Again, epcountyvotes.com is going to be the source to find that of the early voting locations and their hours. Some close at 5, some at 6, some at 7. So just make sure you're aware. And if you haven't already gone out to vote yet, I prefer early voting. That's my thing. But if you're not, make your plan to then vote on election day. Just saying that, because we've seen 5% and change as of last check. I think maybe closer to 6 now. So it's been getting there. But okay, better than we've had recently, but certainly not like gangbuster numbers in any case. But that is slightly different when it comes to the amount of time, attention, and specifically money that's being spent by a variety of groups on, I mean, the election in general. Specifically, Proposition K has not even just taken up all the oxygen in the room, but a lot of the campaign dollars as well.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say among the business industry groups here, it's got to be the number one issue right now. And one indication of that is certainly the PACs that have been formed, the money that's supporting these campaigns. No and yes, mostly coming from industry groups, from business community. I think the latest number I saw is it's somewhere north of $1 million now that has been put forward by PACs and industry groups, urging El Pasoans to oppose Prop K, the climate charter. So it's been a major issue for businesses here for several weeks now.
Yeah, and so we've had conversations with some of these involved groups. I mean, we've had both specifically interview with the Consumer Energy Alliance, one of those business and industry groups that has come in kind of from a nationally based one. Then of course we have the El Pasoans for Prosperity, Pat, and the El Paso Chamber type efforts. We're again some of those mailers, seen some of those signs and billboards as well. The Libre Initiative, another one, specifically the one I can attribute to them is that at the very least on the west side, I'm sure it's been more areas around town, was one of those roving driving billboards that they had going around.
I think at our house, like the countertops are now, covered in these things.
Oh.
We can't throw them away fast enough.
Oh yeah,
There's
easily.
a lot of these mailers, and
Yeah.
we've seen the roving trucks, the even door to door efforts. It's
No,
quite
yeah.
an effort, which really speaks to the concerns I think that the businesses have about this proposition and the impact it could have.
And I'll just make the mention, as I try to do, that there is actually a other items on this ballot. I mean, there's A through J that have their own impact. I'd say probably the second most one I've seen might be on Proposition I, the one that deals with firefighter and police pension fund contributions.
So, I went down to vote today, and I don't think I've ever seen people spend as long as they are in the voting booth. I mean, there are it's a challenging election. There are 11 propositions. They are hard to understand, even if you sit down and read them. And then we have this Proposition K, which is 450 words on the ballot.
Right.
And what it would implement is actually it's about 2,500 word climate charter that would be
Right.
incorporated into the city's charter, which is it's sort of akin to the city's constitution. So,
Sure.
and a lot of these campaigns for and against it, I think in a way can make it a little more difficult. It muddies the water a little bit to find out, to discern what sort of opinion, what sort of fact. It's hard. And what I did in my recommendation is just go read. It is long, but go read the climate charter. That
Yeah.
is what gave me the clearest picture of what it would do. And then go vote.
I mean, I am absolutely in favor of people going and reading the specific source documentation because it is important to know what is being voted on. And sure, I mean, the item on the actual ballot is lengthy, but still might read more questions about like, okay, but wait, how would that be done? So would certainly encourage people before going out there to do
highlights on it. I mean, you can go to
sure.
elpasoclimate.org and read the whole thing there for yourself before voting. And I think really a lot of the concerns I've seen from the business community really boil down to, and it's also important to, I think, point out too that a lot of the city's political leadership, I think a majority of city council, some of our representative in Washington as well, have come out and opposed it. But sort of the perspective I've seen is sort of like the devil's in the details. Is a lot of sort of their argument. They've pointed out some of the very specific pieces of it. So I think one of the best things you can do is just go read the actual climate charter itself.
Again, would encourage everyone to do that. I mean, we have, again, I'll just make the note here, the interview that we did with the Proposition K proponents and in some cases authors of some of the specific language that's on the ballot and then would be put into implementation within the actual climate charter full text itself. We did about that 2-hour and change interview with them on the issues, some of the questions that I have had and that y'all had brought up on it. That's available over on our YouTube channel as well. So there's a whole lot more to go into this, but yeah, the amount of money and focus on this from many different groups has been, I'm not going to call it unprecedented, but unusual for what I still kind of call an off year election, because it's not either a presidential nor a midterm election. It's a in between. And I think it'll be interesting to see. We had, as of I think last week or this week, technically the 6-year anniversary of us doing our mayoral forum, as in 2017, when this show was actually just starting getting going. That was when we had that 8 candidate field for mayor, among other things, and we had some both on and in-person forums along with that. And so I'll need to go back, and it'll be interesting to do kind of the post-mortem on the turnout then versus now, because I have a sneaking suspicion that we might even be seeing more now based on the amount of time, attention, and money that has been spent on this item specifically.
Well, this isn't an election that you would expect large
Sure,
turnout,
yeah.
and even here locally, there's not a lot of big faces on the ballot. That does remind me though. It also there are some school board races.
Yep.
So watch out for those. Most of your tax bill actually goes to the school district, and they're who educate your children. So it is important, but they don't get a lot of attention. But elections like these usually don't see a lot of turnout, but I think we're already seeing numbers that are much higher than would be expected. And, obviously that comes down to the issues here, Proposition K, the climate charter, some of these other propositions, and the money being put behind it. I mean, the business community is really concerned about the economic impact it could have.
Sure.
And this is something that's incorporated into the charter. So it's fairly permanent, and it would be a significant shift for the city. So I think there's just a lot of concern about it, and that explains some of the money pouring into it.
Oh, yeah. Again, over that $1 million already being estimated. So let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Again, that's Robbie Gray joining us here in studio right now. We're going to continue talking with him after we take this next break. Also about some of the other business things. There have been some major shakeups and other major unveilings of projects going on in our region. So let's go ahead and take that break right now. You're, of course, tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Phone lines a little bit later as we do. But in the meantime, all the comments, other things, we'll keep diving into those on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with the KFOX 14 News Update. The Biden administration says it will send 1,500 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border amid unexpected migrant surge following the end of a pandemic-era restriction known as Title 42. El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego confirmed that military troops will arrive on the border on May 10th. They will be spread across the border to process and help CBP with manpower. El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar said the troops would be sent down to focus on administrative tasks so that Customs and Border Protection can work in the field, and that they would not do law enforcement work. But the Borderplex Alliance here in El Paso says that this sends the wrong message to the American people. Despite El Paso city officials stating that they would start enforcing a no camping ordinance throughout the city, hundreds of migrants remain camped outside of Sacred Heart Church. El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego agreed with the city's position on enforcing the no camping ordinance. He says it's better to have the migrant population in a certain place where it's easier to communicate with them. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Slow traffic on the I-10 eastbound right now from Trans Mountain through downtown to the 54 Patriots, a 7-minute delay. Just one injury accident to look out for northbound McCombs at Dyer. Watch for DPS activity, Border Highway westbound at the Yarborough exit. And stop-and-go traffic, Global Reach is slow. 30-minute delays from the Spur down to Montana Avenue. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the CBS Fort Warren Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Not quite as hot for this afternoon, but still pretty warm. Now, yesterday we saw a high of 91 for our Tuesday. Today we'll see a high around 86 degrees, breezy to windy conditions, southwest winds about 10 to 20 miles per hour. Lows tonight dropping down into the 50s. As we look ahead to your Wednesday, looking at partly cloudy skies, breezy to windy with a high around 84 for tomorrow. From the CBS Fort Warren Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
This week on Red Pilled America, should artificial intelligence be stopped? To find the answer, we speak to an AI expert who tells us where AI is going. Listen to Red Pilled America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
Hey, let's force the city to buy the electric company for $8 billion.
It costs 8 times more than El Paso's budget.
Yeah.
Property taxes would skyrocket. That's an awful idea.
That's Prop K. And that's not all. Prop K shuts off water at some gas stations.
That's crazy. No bathrooms or water to stop a fire?
Small price to pay to stop pollution.
But the Environmental Protection Agency said most of El Paso's pollution comes from international sources, not us.
Let's pass it anyway.
Even if it means raising everyone's electric bills and property taxes and cutting police and firefighters?
Now you get it.
This is the worst idea ever. Who wrote this?
My neighbors did.
How can you call yourself an El Pasoan?
I don't. I'm from Austin.
Austin wrote it. Only El Paso can stop it. On May 6th, vote no on Prop K, the worst idea in El Paso history. Political ad paid for by El Pasoans for Prosperity PAC.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Shopping for new blinds? At Blindster, we offer over 50 different blinds, shades, and shutters at low prices, custom made for your windows, and shipping is free. Shop at home and order 10 free samples of any product before you buy. Blindster.com.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day.
I don't watch television, so I get all my news from you.
News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk, a lot of comments, commentary, and back and forth. I mean, the Skeptic Squad and the Thunderdome comments definitely out in force today, as it is usually. And I mean, some other positions going on, including Eric McNabb saying vote for Jacqueline Martinez. She's an educator and the only one talking about the well-being of students. Again, there are the three major school boards having some of their school board positions. They're not all of them. I think they go on a rotating basis, so not all of them would be up at once. But those are certainly important, and would encourage people to, among other things, check out what the candidates are saying. I've got another pile of mailers from them because I'm in one of those areas that has 4 different candidates, so that's my bit of fun. But again, to talk more about what is going on and affecting us here in the region, we do have, again, Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc., sticking around with us. Thanks for coming here again to the studio.
Pleasure to be here.
So, again, elections, Proposition K, Title 42, these are going to be continuing on as topics, but some of the other things that y'all are reporting on affecting other non-top of the headline issues. I mean, we've had some shakeups in one of the biggest El Paso-based companies, the only publicly traded one, Helen of Troy, right?
Yeah, that's right. So there's some more changes at the top that are in store for El Paso, and now we're a little bit more into the deep cuts of the news here. I mean,
Sure.
beyond the top headlines, but
Beyond the bleeding
important
edge,
for
yeah.
El Paso. So Helen of Troy, I think it's a lot of people might not know that name, but they know the brands OXO, Vicks, Drybar.
Sure.
Only publicly traded company here in El Paso, global company. So it announced that its longtime CEO, been in that position for about 10 years, will retire in February of next year.
Okay, and of course there have been some other notable shakeups that have been going on for Helen of Troy, kind of in relation to, you could argue, in relation to the pandemic and business issues. They have that fairly, maybe not the most iconic, but decently stylized headquarter building, kind of off of what used to be the furthest of the west side you really
they're
get.
on the west side,
Yeah.
and they are in the midst of sort of a restructuring, so to speak. They call it Project Pegasus, which is kind of their response to the issues with the consumer market right now, inflation, all of that. So they've
Sure.
cut 10% of their workforce, and they also just released their fourth quarter fiscal results. They reported $484.6 million in net sales, but that's down 6.7%. So they have seen declining sales. It did beat expectations. So in some ways, the market wasn't unhappy about it, but that has been the trend there amidst this difficult market.
So yeah, some of the, again, what's going on with that, and also, I mean, them looking to maybe kind of downsize the in-person workforce there, maybe sell part of the building, all those kind of things going on.
Yeah, they have put the building up on the market. They would be looking to lease it back, and I think that just is a testament to kind of the shrinking footprint that they have there.
Yeah.
Minenberg will be succeeded by the Chief Operations Officer, Noelle Chafois. And she will take over that job next year when he retires, and he's retiring. He said he wants to spend more time with his family and having a better work life balance.
Fair enough. So that's something that is, again, going on in the background and may not be totally as impacting, though. I know some people who were regular devotees of the factory outlet little store room that was a part of it.
Unfortunately, that closed.
Yeah, that did close. So that's one of the bigger, for those not in the stock market, issues, but something that will be very prevalent once it's done. And more going on downtown is that as of this past weekend, more images and leaving looks inside of the Crest building, as it is looking at being completely revamped and turned into, well, a lot of different things, really.
Yeah, one of downtown's icons. I mean, it's an Art Deco beauty in downtown. I think a lot of longtime El Pasoans have various memories there back when it's Five and Dime and
Sure.
and all of that. So What's new? I mean, we've known about this project. Well, Paul Foster's Franklin Mountain Investments is doing the project. They held the official groundbreaking, which means construction and work has started on it. It's an $18 million project, and they've revealed new details about it. You can see renderings of that project at elpasoinc.com. And what it's going to include is a food hall, like you see some of these in other cities, where they have various vendors and kiosks and stuff where you can go and get food in downtown. They are going to resurrect the old soda fountain. I think some will be excited about that. And in the basement, there will be a spa. Looks like a real kind of Art Deco style sort of thing in the basement that will be connected to the other big project that Paul Foster just finished restoring, which is the Plaza Hotel, and it'll be connected by a tunnel that they're going to dig between the Crest Building and the Plaza Hotel.
So the spa will be connected directly to, again, the Plaza Hotel. We'll never have to go outside for that. Crossing the street to go from your spa to a hotel.
It would be awkward as a guest, to shuffle in your slippers and robe, I think, to the spa. So there'll be a tunnel.
There'll be a tunnel, which will be an interesting feature on its own there. But yeah, some of the renderings, some of the design, and again, peaks inside the building are very interesting to me.
We did get a vague completion date too, so they're aiming to complete it in 2025. So it's gonna be a long project. I mean, if you've been in that building, there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, it is set vacant for, gosh, how long now?
I don't have the number in front of me, but I think it's been probably a couple decades. At least.
At the very least. I mean, you kind of give questions about, okay, what time frames was it in or not, or maybe
70s and 80s time frame, I think, is when it really kind of became vacant.
Yeah, so decades, I think, would be pretty safe to say. So seeing that done again, and as you kind of mentioned, in the vein of a lot of downtown revitalization that's been going on by some very big moneyed interests in town. Paul Foster, certainly, like you mentioned, in his projects. But I mean, you also got the Paso del Norte Hotel, the Texas Tower that's also being considered coming up next. So seeing these things, at the very least, not the trend of demolishing and ending up turning into surface level parking lots. Not that would have been totally possible for the Crest, because one of the things I think a lot of people don't get, they imagine that one iconic, the font of it and the mild tower that it has mostly is a architectural feature as opposed to a functional one that's right there at the corner of San Jacinto Plaza. It then kind of sprawls across almost on the other side of Mesa, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can actually the building actually fronts 3 streets.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not something that could have been just leveled and turned into a parking lot has happened previously, but I'm still appreciative of the fact that wasn't the focus or even the concept
here.
It's
good to see some of these projects that were whispered or even announced as before the pandemic actually happen. Some of these actually never get off the ground again. I've been kind of waiting to hear what might be new with the Texas Tower. Haven't heard anything on that one recently.
Capel's building comes to mind. Some others that have been kind of going around in the background but haven't heard much of would be like, the Gateway Hotel, stuff like that. So there's a lot of potential, but seeing follow through. I mean, what's the phrase that I often go with? It takes 90% of the effort will go into the last 10% of the project or something like that. So seeing the follow through and the completion and not we ran out of time, money, and or interest that'll be something we're looking forward as we get closer to that 2025.
Yeah, that's right. And like you mentioned, I mean, too many of these buildings end up just kind of, I think they call it like demolition by neglect.
That's
they end
one
up,
of the phrases.
We've seen some fires in downtown. Eventually, buildings get demolished and such. So it's great to see these old gems get redone in downtown.
One last one I want to mention here, kind of across the state lines, is that you all have been doing some in-depth reporting that we have mentioned in previous weeks. But when it comes to basically the pot business in New Mexico, we saw as we were on the 1-year anniversary as of last month now, of course, 420, of the legalization of marijuana in New Mexico. We saw kind of maybe a small new wave of places opening, and of course a lot of the revenue numbers that you all were delving into when it came to what could be seen, and either being in tourist areas or proximity to El Paso seemed to be at least parts of the important factors for those, at the very least, like within our broadcast area. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, with having a year pass since the legalization of recreational marijuana, it was an opportunity to see what impact it's having. And I got to say that Sunland Park and other towns there on the border of El Paso are really looking back on the past year through a sweet cloud of haze.
Yeah. So
I mean, the numbers aren't that big, but if you look at the actual population of these towns, I mean, it's having a significant impact out there. So,
sure.
I mean, you take Anthony, population 8,500, recreational marijuana sales reached 5.4 million. Sunland Park, New Mexico, population 17,000, 19.4 million in the first year. Las Cruces, 22.3 million. And then, yeah, I mean, the dispensaries and growing operations, some of them combined, are
Sure.
just popping up all there right as you get across the state line in New Mexico. And we talked to one of them that just recently opened called Fields of Dreams in Sunland
Mhm.
Park, and owners said
Yeah.
customers are coming from El Paso.
I mean, that was very much the expectation. Some of the questions I have on the other side of it about the law enforcement questions, not as much as what you delved into, but some more as we do the retrospective of the past year of it is going to be interesting to see how it went forward. I mean,
I think the security questions are an important point,
Sure.
and we'd like to delve into that. Now, we haven't heard a lot,
Sure.
talking to the businesses out there, even the long-standing ones that aren't in the marijuana business, and
No,
there
sure.
doesn't seem like there's much being raised about concerns over security. I mean, actually, one longtime business out there in Sunland Park we talked to said actually their bigger concern is the immigration issue right now. They view
Sure.
kind of the pot market at this point as just sort of another market. But that is something that we are watching, and it would be interesting to hear more, see more of the stats from the police departments out
Law
there.
enforcement, yeah, you all note in your story that you did reach out to the Sunland Park Police Department, but haven't heard back from them.
Yeah, we weren't able to get a comment from them. I mean, hopefully we can in the future and do a story on that. I mean, it is important to point out, don't bring it into Texas. It's still illegal here.
Yep. Or I'm going to call it north, west, or east of our immediate area, because you run into those Border Patrol checkpoints, among other things. But that's just some of what's going on here. So again, joining us in studio right now has been Robbie Gray, editor of El Paso Inc. Thanks for coming by and talking to us about some of the big stories and in-depth reporting y'all are doing, as we do first Tuesdays of the month.
Good to be here. Thanks, Andrew.
Absolutely happy to have you on. And with that, we'll go ahead and take that next break right now. And coming out of this break, we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines as we normally do. So if you want to get on that line, add your 2 cents, chime in on the very many things going on and affecting us in the Borderland today and recently. That number to call is, of course, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with the KFOX 14 News Update. The Biden administration says it will send 1,500 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border amid unexpected migrant surge following the end of a pandemic-era restriction known as Title 42. El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego confirmed that military troops will arrive on the border on May 10th. They will be spread across the border to process and help CBP with manpower. El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar said the troops would be sent down to focus on administrative tasks so that Customs and Border Protection can work in the field and that they would not do law enforcement work. But the Borderplex Alliance here in El Paso says that this sends the wrong message to the American people. Despite El Paso city officials stating that they would start enforcing a no camping ordinance throughout the city, hundreds of migrants remain camped outside of Sacred Heart Church. El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego says he doesn't agree with the city's position on enforcing the no camping ordinance. He says it's better to have the migrant population in a certain place where it's easier to communicate with them. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic's moving slow on the I-10 eastbound from Trans Mountain through downtown to the 54 Patriot, 10-minute delays. On the spur, eastbound Liberty Expressway from the Gateway over to the Loop, that's a 7-minute delay. Still less stop-and-go traffic downtown, southbound Oregon from East University down to Border Highway, and one injury accident to look out for. Northbound McCombs at Dyer. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
This week on Red Pilled America, should artificial intelligence be stopped? To find the answer, we speak to an AI expert who tells us where AI is going. Listen to Red Pilled America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
How a busy baker beat back foot pain. Meet Sanja.
Brownies, cupcakes, cookies. I love to bake. There have been times when I've been on my feet for at least 12 hours.
And that's how things went from sweet to sour.
I had excruciating pain in both feet to a point where I had to limp out of the kitchen.
So she called up a former foot pain sufferer, her big sister.
She told me, you need to go to the Good Feet store and get some arch supports.
Smart lady.
It was an awesome experience. Scott took great care of my feet.
He's the arch support specialist who fitted her.
He was very patient, very knowledgeable. Scott was the man.
Now Sanja can have her cake and bake it too.
Oh yeah, my feet are very happy now.
You're gonna have to make some cookies for Scott.
I've already done that.
Of course you did. See how arch supports work for you. Stop in or schedule your free fitting at goodfeet.com.
Airway Boulevard at I-10.
At El Paso Electric, we're working to meet our goal of providing 100% carbon-free energy by 2045. By next year, we'll double our renewable energy resources. In 2 years, we'll more than triple it. In 3 years, our solar output will increase almost 8 times. We're already 50% carbon-free in 2023, but there's more work to do. Because a clean energy future is more than a goal. It's a reality we're working towards every day. Visit epelectric.com/clean energy to see our plan.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Shopping for new blinds? At Blindster, we offer over 50 different blinds, shades, and shutters at low prices, custom made for your windows, and shipping is free. Shop at home and order 10 free samples of any product before you buy. Blindster.com.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Got to hit the right button in here sometimes. Thank you very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. We are basically out of time for this segment already, but don't worry, we're all both still taking those phone calls and continuing to talk about the many issues affecting us here in the Borderland. We'll just have to kind of kick that to the top of the next hour. A lot of comments coming in online. Keep those going. And again, if you want to get on that phone line, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break and the top of the hour news with more on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Traffic's moving slow on the I-10 eastbound from Trans Mountain through downtown to the 54 Patriot, 10-minute delays. On the spur, eastbound Liberty Expressway from the Gateway over to the Loop, that's a 7-minute delay. Still less stop-and-go traffic downtown, southbound Oregon from East University down to Border Highway, and one injury accident to look out for. Northbound McCombs at Dyer. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Freedom of speech lives here.
To me, freedom of speech is being able to say anything you want.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Records, milestones, firsts, lasts, and everything in between. What happened today in sports history on iHeartRadio?
What's going on, fellow sports fans? It's Andy West. Let's look back on this day in sports history, May 3rd. We'll start off today back in 1952. CBS is the first network to televise the Kentucky Derby as Hill Gale wins by 2 lengths over Subfleet. Jockey Eddie Arcaro wins a record 5th Derby, and Ben A. Jones gets the record for most Derby wins, 6 by a trainer. Flash forward to today in 2001, Dallas, with an 84-83 win over Utah, becomes the 6th team in NBA history to win a 5-game series after trailing 0-2. The Mavericks rally from double-digit deficits in all 3 wins, including 17 in Game 5. And today in 2009, Carl Crawford tied a modern Major League record with 6 stolen bases to help Tampa Bay beat Boston 5-3. Crawford was 4 for 4 with an RBI and became the 4th player to swipe 6 bases in a game, joining Eddie Collins, who did it twice, Otis Nixon, and Eric Young.
Now you know. Today in sports history on iHeartRadio.
News on the hour and a half. traffic, and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Former President Trump is not going to testify. Trump lawyer Joe Tacopina told the U.S. District Court judge that his client will not testify in the trial for E. Jean Carroll, who claims she was raped by Trump in the 1990s. Friends of Carroll took the stand Tuesday, with one saying the writer called her minutes after the alleged incident at the Manhattan department store. Members of the Writers Guild are hitting the picket lines as contract negotiations stall. Natalie Migliori reports.
Writers Guild member Sasha Stewart says contract talks have come to a halt.
We can't negotiate with a brick wall.
Stewart adds being a writer has become harder in recent years.
Because of the shorter seasons, because of the gaps between writing and production, and also it's harder to get a job in between other jobs.
Viewers will start seeing reruns of late night television first, and then soap operas will be affected next.
We all love what we do.
WGA last went on strike in 2007 for 100 days. I'm Natalie Migliori.
Wall Street is closing sharply lower as investors brace for the Federal Reserve's decision on interest rates. Financial shares led the declines on renewed fears about the banking sector. Regional banks PacWest and Western Alliance had trading paused after stocks tumbled more than 20%. The federal government is sending 1,500 active duty troops to the border ahead of the end of Title 42 on May 11th, and border communities are preparing for an expected surge of migrants. In El Paso, Deputy City Manager Mario D'Agostino says they will be using 2 vacant middle schools as migrant shelters.
How many people can we put in these facilities? That's to be determined. It determines on the population that we're seeing. Single adult males, you don't want to put thousands of them in one facility.
You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A longtime Muslim mayor of one New Jersey town is being barred from a White House ceremony. Liz Warner explains.
The U.S. Secret Service said it blocked Prospect Park Mayor Mohammed Karula from attending a White House celebration with President Biden, marking the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. The Secret Service declined to provide details on why he was barred, noting it cannot comment on White House security operations and methods. The Council on American Islamic Relations condemned the incident, demanding an apology for Karula, who's been mayor for 17 years. The council also noting he was previously detained and questioned at JFK about potential terrorist connections.
More pink slips are flying on Wall Street. Morgan Stanley reportedly plans to cut about 3,000 jobs by the end of June. According to Bloomberg, most of the layoffs will affect the banking and trading staff. Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, and Citigroup are among the top advisory firms doing some belt tightening amid the slump in IPOs and mergers. Washington police will have a much bigger presence on state highways this Friday. Brad Ford has the details.
Washington State Patrol and law enforcement agencies around the state will conduct a high-visibility enforcement to reduce collisions and deter crime. The 24-hour Arrive Alive emphasis uses WSP data to help troopers determine areas where patrols will have the greatest impact in saving lives. So far this year, WSP troopers have investigated over 10,000 collisions across the state, with 177 crashes involving injuries and 64 fatalities.
The James Webb Space Telescope has detected water vapor in a star system 26 light years away. According to CNN, astronomers are now trying to figure out if it could mean that it's the first known existence of an atmosphere around an exoplanet. The rocky exoplanet named GJ486b is about 30% bigger than Earth with stronger surface gravity. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Money. That's money. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by the Tudor Dixon Podcast.
Coming up on the next episode of the Tudor Dixon Podcast, Trent Talbot left a career in medicine to create a book publishing company that encourages children to place God, country, and family ahead of themselves. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
Rover's Morning Glory.
It's The Woody Show.
It's Elliot in the Morning.
All of the once-in-a-lifetime events.
iHeartRadio Music Festival.
Woo! All of the best free curated playlists. It's everything that rocks. All of the great podcasts for every interest.
This is Freddie Prinze Jr. from the Wrestling with Freddie podcast.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome. All of your favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
All right, class.
let's hear what everyone did this weekend. Jill?
Well, I raised my older sister to a big oak tree. It was at least 100 years old. My mom said I must have set a record or something. And then we went down by a stream and perched up on this huge rock and saw all of these little minnows swimming around way below us. And then I rescued my little brother from an evil slug king who was guarding him at the bush fortress. And my sister and I brought him back to our super twig fort for safety. And then we all laid out and told stories until it got dark. And the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Awesome. Where were you, Jill?
Yeah. We went to the forest. It's not that far away. Anyone want to come this weekend?
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week and find the fun, adventurous you. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of commentary, a lot of comments, conversation, etc. coming in over there, including those likes and reacts that we always appreciate. Flaco Jimenez, Richard Janisic, Matt Olson, Jim McCarvey, Gravy, saying that one right, Ida Beza Gardner, Alex Campos, Monica Cervantes, Sean Gardner, Robbie Flores, and James Holmes, including Bernadette Bandicol chiming in hello. And so Biden is sending troops to us and the entire border overall. Got 1,500 anticipated as of May 10th, doing the back end work, I guess would be the right way, shorthand way to put it. A lot of other commentary coming in, including Flaco Jimenez saying I work Tuesday through Saturday as a line haul truck driver relay run. Today marks 4 Tuesdays in a row. My run has been canceled. We're normally pretty busy this time of year. This should concern everyone, as trucking activity is a good indicator of where the economy is heading. Interesting way to put it, frankly, because, seeing what is being desired to be moved can be a pretty decent one. And also other things about voting going on. Sean Gardner saying big no for Adams in EPISD. And Richard Janisic saying that the Sunrise has been posting on Facebook. Read about this statement that says it all. So, there's a lot going back and forth. Would encourage people to go directly to the sources, specifically, and also a Tritosac over on the YouTube saying one of the candidates for mayor in Horizon City surely announced on one of the social media platforms how a whopping 510 votes have been cast so far. That's 3% of the voting age population. See, that's why I'm saying that the county-wide amount of that's 5, 6, maybe 7% at this point. I realized I forgot to check the numbers today. Hopefully it's at that point is good in comparison, because apathy much is if I had a bat, that would just be like the vote bat like that. I would just go around and anyway, I'm just saying I get very frustrated at there not being. I'd probably just beat up a pinata to take my frustration out on it, because seriously, the fact that people don't go out and vote when there are serious, important things that affect even the local stuff is. I don't get it. I will never get it, so that's why I'll keep talking about it ad infinitum. Anyway, we do have the phone lines open, if full up at the moment. Keep that number handy, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We'll be getting to that throughout the whole rest of this hour, so let's go ahead and jump right in. We do have Ben on the east side with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Andrew. First of all, I apologize for bringing this up on a local discussion day, but this will have an effect on all El Pasoans. There is a video out that I think everybody should listen to. Basically, it's about leading developers of AI. Mm-hmm. And you can look it up online. Just say Google the AI dilemma. March 9th, 2023, the AI dilemma.
And I think that was put out by the Center for Humane Technology, right?
What's that?
I think it was put out by, that specific video was put out by the Center for Humane Technology, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
they're leading developers of AI,
Mhm.
co-founders of the Center for Humane Technology, Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin, attempt to explain and warn the people about the mainstream apathy towards the dangers of AI during a lecture in front of big tech heavy hitters, including the creator of Siri.
Mhm.
In it, they mentioned this. They said that 50% of AI researchers believe there is a 10% or greater chance that humans will go extinct because we cannot control AI.
Mhm.
That gets your attention.
Yeah.
Imagine, as they say, if you have 50% of airline engineers thought there was a 10% chance that everyone would die on a plane that you were about to get on. Would you get on that plane?
And I mean, sure, this is a very much a national, if not international topic, and we have been attempting to get something on the calendar for this when it comes to discussion of the development, if anything, particularly locally, is going on with it. So it's not totally out of form, but I will say this, that one of the international complications that comes up with this, I mean, this is a recent video you're talking about. Again, the AI dilemma is the video you're referring to there, and it'll come up pretty easily if anyone searches this up. But I mean, there have been talks before the United Nations and being put out by like Elon Musk and others, Elon Musk, that is, about the idea of there being like autonomous weapons being, you might think like, okay, Chat GPT, how is that going to cause the extinction of humanity? But you take that further and you put it to the idea of, autonomous weapons, things that are not being told to, but deciding on their own whether or not to destroy or take human life. That starts making it a little bit more real, I got to say.
Yes, and the leading developers of AI are pleading on this video, are pleading for people to talk to, and to your senators, your House members, other leaders in the community to bring this to their attention, because we need to put a pause on AI development. That's what and everybody says that we can't do that because China will get ahead of us or anything like that. There's something going on, as you'll hear in the video, that if we in the United States just put a pause on this, we may be able, and the other researchers that are involved in this thing, if you could just put a pause on them, that maybe this won't happen.
Yeah, whether or not a pause is feasible or not
the
is
AI dilemma. March 9th, 2023. All you have to do is look up the AI dilemma.
Fair enough.
Very important.
I mean, it's certainly one that may come to define the 21st century, though. That's definitely a cloudy crystal ball moment for myself, but it certainly has a lot of importance on it. So, I mean, it's an important enough subject. I'll certainly agree with you there.
If you haven't listened to the video, Andrew, really, it's an hour long.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. You won't believe what they're saying. But anyway, stay well, stay safe. God bless. And let's go, Brandon.
Well, appreciate the point in the call. I mean, it definitely has local impact, and there's local development going on. There've been local policies that have been put forth. I mean, some of the things that are referenced in the video, I've seen parts of it, not all of it just yet, kind of skimmed along with it because, well, it's not a totally local thing. It's certainly important. But, I mean, they bring up the idea that some of the implications have been put forth about, like, cheating on homework or, putting together quick scripts have been, like, the top level, but maybe not the true depth that needs to be explored with that. So, again, still working on trying to get something on the calendar about this, about what kind of AI development looks like and what that even means for us for the future. So it's certainly a topic we'll be exploring it more in the future. I can guarantee that much.
I thank you for doing that. Please do.
All
Okay.
right.
Especially listen to that video. That's a good place to start. I don't know that much about AI, but it was a very good video that explained it very, very well and took you step by step through the process of what is happening right now.
Fair enough. Well, again, thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Some other commentary coming in along that as well, like Sean Gardner saying Terminator is a future documentary, which I mean, sure, it's easy to go to the full Frankenstein effect of it as a, Skynet type of implications, and why I will never be happy with anything that is put forth as even jokingly called Skynet, because why would you call that bad juju on yourself and the rest of us? John Browston taking let's just call it an effectual take on it, or a very where rubber hits the road, saying AI can't take over as long as humans can cut electricity going to the computers. Sure, but I think that the real frontier, to just indulge in this topic for a second longer, that once we start getting past the direct control of the technology, like, sure, right now, unplug the thing that's digital percussive maintenance, as I call it, turn it back off and turn it on again. But if it starts getting to where these systems are no longer controlled directly by humans because we have abdicated that responsibility, that control, that power to systems that were designed to help us, but maybe no one knows how to deal with them anymore. We're getting real future focused with that, I will totally admit, but this is a time I've spent the decent amount reading up on, and has been decently explored by, well, frankly, science fiction in a lot of ways. So not having those in mind is a chief in satire on the YouTube saying a slippery slope. Sure, there's aspects of it, but I sometimes take slippery slope as reason to be careful to make sure we don't end up on that guardrails. Trinosec AI being already programmed to think on their own. Think is a powerful phrase. Self-awareness is one of those standards that's often put forth as what will be a true AI, because right now, I mean, there's a lot of use of the words artificial intelligence, and whether or not that totally strictly applies is it's not what I would call a true AI, one that is self-aware. And now they start defining like what does self-awareness means, and you get straight into philosophical implications, is just fraught, let's put it that way. But also Trader Sack taking issue with John Browsleton's previous comment saying there's no Prop K in Horizon election, so therefore no reason to vote. Trader Sack saying that just taking issue with that comment. I didn't take it as John saying as therefore if I lived there I wouldn't vote, but that for the average person, I mean, at the very least, the mailers that I get, the whole pile of them we got here, are irrelevant when it comes to there. So there hasn't been as much focus and input money wise into that election. So I can see that as maybe a reason why there hasn't been as much voting. That's the way I took it anyway. Let's go ahead and take one more call before we go ahead. Go time for that next. Let's go ahead and take that next call. We do have Eric on the east side here with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Yes. Yesterday I pointed out how the city's study would save the city $154 million in energy costs between 2030 and 2045. And about immediately after, Jerry called in with a bunch of bad faith concerns, just opposing progress because, conservative media has conditioned him to do so. Mm-hmm. And, just to quickly address those, about the, how long solar panels will last. Solar panels, according to Forbes, last 25 to 30 years. And most reliable companies that sell them come with 25-year warranties. So this idea that some hailstorm is going to take out the solar panels the city invested in to save money and therefore, wipe out those savings is just, irrational. And, again, the Prop K, what the city study says is that $154 million would be saved in energy cost and 2045. And if you look at if you look at those numbers from Forbes about the longevity of these solar panels, 25 to 30 years, that's a ton of savings. That $154 million is just from the 15 years between 2030 and 2045. If we look at the entire lifespan going on the low end of 25 years of these solar panels, which the city's study said can power all of the city's infrastructure, which would be $12 million in savings per year. 25 years times 12 million is $300 million in savings over the lifespan of these solar panels. So you could see how this is fiscally responsible policy. And, like Prop K, it's going to fail because El Paso Electric and you and the business interests of El Paso are, the disinformation pushed out, it's just too overwhelming. But just looking at these numbers, though, you could see how the solar panel aspect of it is fiscally responsible policy that we should be pushing our current cities. What's the climate? What was that position created by Prop C?
Shoot, let me pull that one up here. It's the climate. I'm missing the exact language on it, but it's that $5 million that goes towards those studies. I know the one you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, I think there was a position. That person and the city council should be fighting to implement this part of Prop K, which is going to save the city millions of dollars in the long run, according to the city's study. And if we were to, if we were to replace those solar panels after 25 years, like after their warranties expire, it would cost $115 million to replace them. And we could see that investment over 25 years, or the lifespan of those solar panels, would produce $300 million in savings. So 300 million minus the 115, you could see that's an insane amount of savings that the city should be investing in. We should be trying to make El Paso's energy, costs. We shouldn't be buying for energy from El Paso Electric when we could be saving millions of dollars by getting this energy from the sun, according to the city's study on this. So we should be pushing the city to do this just from a fiscal responsibility perspective. The numbers just make sense and add up.
I mean, I get what you're saying about it, though. I'm not quite sure I'm 100% with you on the way you're talking about it with some of the numbers. Looking at the city study, specifically the one put forth by Year Out Energy, dated February 2nd of this year, City of El Paso, Texas Climate Policy Amendment to the Charter, they go through and do some of the breakdowns. This is the source of the information that they come through for the costs, both the yearly ones, that $4.12 million, as well as the complete through the lifespan of it, that's roughly, again, $154 million, give or take. They put some of the numbers, particularly when it comes to a renewable energy goals plan, as being some of those budgetary costs, specifically the part, I believe it's on page 4 of the study, 80% clean renewable energy by 2030, that they look at the actual costs that are being seen by the city of El Paso, both combined between electricity and natural gas, as being around $11 million a year as of the current moment. On the same page with me there?
Yeah, it's between 11 and 12 million. That 1 million difference doesn't change the math to the point where my analysis is incorrect.
Well, but so what they specifically say here is that on that same page
at the you're trying to communicate more disinformation.
I'm literally we're agreeing on the numbers so far, but the point that I'm getting down to there is at the bottom of that same page is it talks about the estimated annual utility cost savings from efficiency specifically. I mean, they make the line about that the cheapest source of energy is energy never consumed, and that could save about $3.4 million. So through the kind of 15 years, ESPC, about $50 million from that specifically as the part of it. So I think that not just the electrification, but the efficiency is one of the critical components to see that full amount of savings that you're talking about.
Of course, that's going to save $3.4 million per year in the very first few years of Prop K passing.
But you don't expect Prop K to pass at this point.
Of course not. The El Paso's business interests are pouring too much money to misinform El Pasoans, and fear is powerful, and disinformation is so powerful, and like for example, like right-wing media, they've poisoned your mind and your listeners' minds to believe, man-made climate change isn't real, and scientists are all communists and nonsense like that. So that's why I always try to appeal to the fiscal responsibility aspect of the investing in solar panels, as opposed to the protecting human civilization and future generations living, that man-made climate change is going to ravage and make unsustainable, according to NASA and the world scientists, which conservatives just blindly ignore in favor of Fox News and oil industry and business interests.
Again, we're getting pretty far afield from anything you can actually point at to me saying or what we've said on this program, and I'm going to continue to put it forth that this program is not going to be the whipping boy for anyone else who disagrees, either on this station or in the sphere you think we inhabit. all I have said on that comes down to this issue is that I am less interested in the global implications as opposed to what we are going to do here locally. There are some very practical things that we need to be concerned about as we are looking at more prevalence of these so-called 100-year storms, those kind of things. At the very least, I'm going to contend that like loose rock as a decorative landscaping effort and the way it just constantly gets washed into the roads whenever we have these increasingly powerful storms come through is probably going to be a bad idea. And wondering how we deal with water runoff, how we deal with power generation, among other things. Sure, that's certainly a component of it, is probably at the very least for the local level, the most important thing for us to deal with. Water resources, absolutely. I think we got that better in hand than a lot of other, let's just call it Southwest or even Western states, as we do have some dedicated water resources. Rio Grande, kind of, it's still a significant resource, but then specifically the Hueco Bolson and stuff like that is an important thing for us to be concerned about when it comes to these. I mean, sure, global concerns, global issues, but the local aspect is what I am pretty consistently focused on there. So if you got other issues, go off on it, but trying to hold us accountable for something that has not even actually been talked about as a focus for us on this program is simply put not going to fly. So appreciate the point in the call for what it's worth. And again, I do contend that even if it does come out that Proposition K doesn't pass, I'm not convinced one way or the other. Again, I'm not aware of any exit polling. I've gotten some stories from y'all about things that you may or may not have seen in the polls that give you reason to believe that. We're following up on that. I'll just put it that way. But, I mean, in the meantime, again, we'll see what comes out of it. I'm not, again, convinced that it's actually going to fail or not, really either way, until we get closer to it. I mean, I have certain cloudy crystal ball, all that kind of stuff. Given the demographics that have been voting, let's just say I have certain expectations, but we'll see what happens in the aftermath of Election Day. So let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Oh, I am blowing up these breaks today. So we'll probably come back briefly, tell you what we got coming up for you, but then get back to those phone lines. So again, if you want to call in, add your 2 cents on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A crash is blocking the right lane on westbound Talbot Avenue at Trans Mountain, slowing traffic. I-10 eastbound slow, Trans Mountain to the Patriot, a 10-minute delay. I-10 westbound at Eastlake, a stalled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder. And significantly slow traffic continues eastbound Spur from the Gateway to the Loop, 10-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Tudor Dixon Podcast.
Coming up on the next episode of the Tudor Dixon Podcast, Kyle Olson joins the show to talk about the madness at Michigan State University. Banned words? Are our kids too sensitive? Be sure to catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, let's force the city to buy the electric company for $8 billion.
It costs 8 times more than El Paso's budget.
Yeah.
Property taxes would skyrocket. That's an awful idea.
That's Prop K. And that's not all. Prop K shuts off water at some gas stations.
That's crazy. No bathrooms or water to stop a fire?
Small price to pay to stop pollution.
But the Environmental Protection Agency said most of El Paso's pollution comes from international sources, not us.
Let's pass it anyway.
Even if it means raising everyone's electric bills and property taxes and cutting police and firefighters?
Now you get it.
This is the worst idea ever. Who wrote this?
My neighbors did.
How can you call yourself an El Pasoan?
I don't. I'm from Austin.
Austin wrote it. Only El Paso can stop it. On May 6th, vote no on Prop K, the worst idea in El Paso history. Political ad paid for by El Pasoans for Prosperity PAC.
Staples has everything to help small businesses do big things. Shipping supplies and services so you can fill big orders. The latest tech so you can create the next big thing. And now during Staples Small Business Deal Days, when rewards members spend $100 or more, they get $30 back in rewards to use on big things, little things, or anything they need. Plus, find new deals in-store every week on tech, office chairs, and shipping supplies. Because for small businesses, Staples knows savings are a big thing. Rewards offer ends 5/13. Limit 1. Redeemable in-store only.
This far into rush hour traffic, most people would have rage accelerated at least once. But not you, Lacey No Hard Accelerations Ever Johnson. Because you are a safe driver. And like most drivers who sign up for Snapshot from Progressive, which customizes your rate for how and how much you drive, you could earn a discount for your good driving. So if your hula dancing dashboard doll thinks you're going to hard accelerate because you're running late, then your hula dancing dashboard doll doesn't know Lacey No Hard Accelerations Ever Johnson. Sign up for Snapshot today.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Snapshot not available in all states or from all agents.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit kab.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of commentary, a lot of different things going on online. Those chiming in, tuning in over on the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, including Flaco Jimenez, Amber Banda, Ion Graham, Bernadette Bandicole, Richard Janisic, Matt Olson, Jim McCravey, I think I got that one right this time, Ida Beza Gardner, Alex Campos, Monica Cervantes, Sean Gardner, Robbie Flores, and James Holmes. We'll be continuing on our conversation with those, popping up some of the commentary that's going on already. But so just getting back on track with the breaks. We're going to take that bottom of the hour news break right now, as it's basically already past time for it. And we're getting back with those phone calls. So keep that number handy, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break and the bottom of the hour news with more Talk El Paso. If you're on the line, stay there. If you want to get your chances full up at the moment, again, 915-544-5876. Back in a minute.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with the KFOX 14 News Update. The Biden administration says it will send 1,500 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border amid an expected migrant surge following the end of a pandemic-era restriction known as Title 42. El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego confirmed that military troops will arrive on the border on May 10th. They will be spread across the border to process and help CBP with manpower. El Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar said the troops would be sent down to focus on administrative tasks so that Customs and Border Protection can work in the field and that they would not do law enforcement work. But the Borderplex Alliance here in El Paso says that this sends the wrong message to the American people. Despite El Paso city officials stating that they would start enforcing a no camping ordinance throughout the city, hundreds of migrants remain camped outside of Sacred Heart Church. El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego says he doesn't agree with the city's position on enforcing the no camping ordinance. He says it's better to have the migrant population in a certain place where it's easier to communicate with them. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Two crashes on the I-10 westbound just now, and I-10 westbound at Chelsea, a minor accident, 2 vehicles off on the right shoulder. I-10 westbound at Reynolds, 2 vehicles involved, multiple lanes blocked. Already 12-minute delays, I-10 westbound starting at McRae to the 54 Patriot. Slow on the I-10 eastbound, Trans Mountain to the Patriot, 10-minute delays. Injury accident, southbound Dyer, just south of Trans Mountain. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the CBS Fort Warren Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Not quite as hot for this afternoon, but still pretty warm. Now, yesterday we saw a high of 91 for our Tuesday. Today we'll see a high around 86 degrees, breezy to windy conditions, southwest winds about 10 to 20 miles per hour. Lows tonight dropping down into the 50s. As we look ahead to your Wednesday, looking at partly cloudy skies, breezy to windy with a high around 84 for tomorrow. From the CBS Fort Warren Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by the Tudor Dixon Podcast.
Coming up on the next episode of the Tudor Dixon Podcast, Kyle Olson joins the show to talk about the madness at Michigan State University. Banned words? Are our kids too sensitive? Be sure to catch new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
At El Paso Electric, we're working to meet our goal of providing 100% carbon-free energy by 2045. By next year, we'll double our renewable energy resources. In 2 years, we'll more than triple it. In 3 years, our solar output will increase almost 8 times. We're already 50% carbon-free in 2023, but there's more work to do. Because a clean energy future is more than a goal. It's a reality we're working towards every day. Visit epelectric.com/clean energy to see our plan.
Right now, during Staples Free Tech Take Back, rewards members get $10 back in Staples Rewards when they recycle their tech. Ends June 3rd. Limit 1 reward per month. Exclusions apply. Visit staples.com/recycling for details. Cut the cord on your old tech and recycle it at Staples. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
Tweens have mastered the art of tuning out. Jen, there's a spider in the car. We're turning your room into a home gym. See? Nothing. But some messages need to get through, like making sure they're buckled up the whole ride, every time. Do whatever it takes to make your child listen. Jen, I friended your boyfriend.
Wait, what?
Buckle up, sweetie.
Never give up until they buckle up. Learn more at safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you very much for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. And a lot of conversation going on, a lot of different points being brought up, and still a lot of different viewpoints, other things, but continuing on, squeezing in the phone calls we can. Again, if you want to get your chance of getting on the line, still pull up, but the number is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Matt Mon's asking, besides Prop K, where's a good source for information for the pros and cons of the other propositions on the ballot? Maybe not totally the pros and cons, but at the very least explanation, because, I mean, some of them, like, so, for instance, Prop A about City Council being able to hire and fire their own staff, maybe that one's a little bit more clear than others, but others, like, if you're wondering about, like, what's going on with the civil service examinations and stuff like that, it may take okay, but what is the current system? El Paso Matters, as James Radcliffe mentions, is a decent spot for that, because they kind of lay out what the background is. They do have their voter guide online, so highly recommend that, elpasomatters.org, among other things. James specifically saying that I will probably vote for A, C, E, F, and H. So different viewpoints. If you're just going to say no to all of them, let's just say I would encourage you to at least know why you're voting no, as opposed to if they want it, I don't want it. Just saying. Still encouraging everyone to go out and vote regardless. So if you haven't already, you might have a little bit of a chance, depending on your location, to get the last day of early voting today. But it is, it is getting close to it, so you might have to, as long as you make your plan to actually vote on election day, please do so. Anyway, getting back to those phone lines now, we do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for taking my call. First of all, the conclusion of Title 42. Why are we doing that? Why is Title 42 coming to an end? That's what I'd like to know.
So, as opposed to the previous times, like in the November, December, the last time in the last 6 months this came up as an issue specifically in our region, that was for the end of Title 42 on its own, specifically as an immigration policy. Then it was, of course, subject to a Supreme Court case that was supposed to have progressed by a March, but then that technically got dismissed because the federal government overall has said it's going to end all of the pandemic era policies. So these, to be clear, are not laws, but policies that were enacted in deference to the pandemic emergency orders type of thing. So with all of those ending, I mean, this doesn't just affect Title 42. We got other interviews that we're working on for you all, including what's going on with Medicaid and how the automatic extensions that have been going on for better part of 3 years are also going to end. So the reason it's ending in this specific circumstance is because all federal era pandemic policies will be ending as of May 11th.
Yes, and it comes to another point I want to make. Aren't we supposed to follow the science? Eliminating Title 42, wouldn't this create more of an influx of individuals who have who are infected with COVID and or its variants?
I mean, yeah, the COVID is not gone by any means. It's fallen maybe off a bit by the wayside. There are still, of course, official communications on, vaccination pushes. There's more treatments that have come out, those kind of things. So it is not as prominent as it used to be. Particularly, I feel like it's been getting downwards ever since particularly treatments came out that were more viable than not, as opposed to a having to use respirators, those kind of things. But I guess that's a part of it, and the reason the federal government is making that decision that is going to, and again, Title 42 is of major impact in our region, and we're definitely going to keep talking about it and that anticipated end of it, but there's a lot more that is also involved in it. So honestly, as much as immigration and border security is going to be our local focus as we get closer to May 11th and probably actually beyond, but it's a lot further reaching than that, I have to say.
Well, just let me give some figures. And
sure.
Remember, we need to follow the science, and we need to look at the figures, okay? From the Texas Health and Human Services, and this is as of April 26th, 2023 at 1:10 p.m. in the afternoon, Eastern Time. There were 3,410 new COVID cases and 63 reported fatalities. The state of Texas has gone through confirmed 92,283 deaths because of COVID.
Sounds about right. Don't have those exact figures in front of me, but
yeah, I have them in front of me. Now, this is still an issue out there. We also have immigrants. Now, I'm all for legal immigration, but we also have a situation where these immigrants are coming in. Some of them are not vaccinated. Some of them have no vaccination for the most common diseases that have afflicted us. Some of these individuals have ailments that require treatment, which will put a burden on our already strained facilities here in El Paso.
I mean, yeah, dealing with the way I have spoken in the past with also, of course, with the, governmental response, the shelters and other things like that. But even with some of the NGOs, with the, nonprofit shelters, Opportunity Center, Hope Border Institute, other organizations like that, organizing it, basically the playbook has been for if they end up, taking on the responsibility for those once they're released from the federal custody, from the federal processing, etc., is of basic screenings, dealing with immediate needs, including medical issues if need be, and sometimes that, of course, can involve having to take them to the hospital if that is the case. Though federal authorities are supposed to do some level of treatment of that, so it shouldn't usually reach that level, but it sometimes has, in the very least, in the past. So yeah, the response of this is much more than I've often talked about it being a kind of a keep them moving mentality. That is still very much at the core of it, but it's not as simple as and get them on the next bus in some of these cases, certainly.
Well, yes, I agree with what you're saying, but still, who is paying for it? We, the taxpayers, and taxes are forever. We're not going to see any decrease in our property taxes. We're not going to see any decrease, measurable decrease in any type of tax we have to pay. Andrew,
I would be surprised if we see a decrease, at the very least, in property valuations anytime soon, though I will say fair is fair. The actual amount you get taxed on that is decided by the taxing indices, which, of course, just as is also fair to mention, some of those are up for election, the ones who will end up making that determination when it comes to the school boards. I know these get complicated issues, but let me just say this. We are actually working on an interview, expect to have on either later this week or early next one, on the actual, Central Appraisal District and their process, so we'll be getting more insight to that as well.
Well, I've already put in 5 hours of research on my tax protest. But getting back to the immigrants,
sure.
Hey, Andrew, let them in. We can handle them. I mean, famous words.
Yeah.
4 words, Andrew. We can handle them.
Yeah, anything that comes to like a bring it on type of situation where you don't have control over all of the variables, including specifically what a different country's policies are going to be, it's not the kind of thing I would say. I'm just going to put it that way.
Well, I'll tell you this much. Not only are they creating a burden, an economic burden here in the U.S., I've got a lot of friends south of the border, and they are complaining also about the stresses that they're under out there. But hey, thank you for taking my call. I turn the mic back to you.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, let's squeeze in another call or two if we can, as much as possible. We do have Raul in the Northeast line with us right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
You'd have to agree with me, and so would everybody else listening to this program, that Supreme Court decisions affect El Pasoans, like the repeal of Roe versus Wade, forcing El Paso's women who seeking an abortion to have to go to another state, or immigration laws, or laws protecting or that fail to protect the environment. Now, the Senate Judiciary Committee held hearings on the Supreme Court ethics reforms today, and this follows recent reports of 5 scandals that have prompted criticism of the justices' ethical practices or lack of. Chief Justice John Roberts declined an invitation to testify. Now, he obviously doesn't want to answer difficult questions about the lack of ethics on the part of his fellow Republican justices. And this hearing comes after lawmakers last week introduced a bipartisan bill that would require the Supreme Court to create a code of conduct for its justices. This is sorely needed. Right now they don't have one, and they police themselves, which is not a good idea. There's no check on them, unfortunately. Now the scandals that these Republican justices are facing include, number one, Clarence Thomas and these luxury trips that he's been taking for years. That would cost millions of dollars given to him by a billionaire by the name of Harlan Crow, a Republican mega donor. Now, the problem here is that Uncle Thomas failed to report these on his financial disclosure forms. It stinks of high heaven.
Let me put it this way. Certainly, the Supreme Court and its decisions can have significant impacts here in the Borderland region. El Paso has been directly referenced in even some of the pre-overturning of Roe v. Wade decisions. Absolutely. But, and I'm also always going to be in favor of transparency at all levels of government. So there are ethic questions that are not wanting to be answered. That gets me more interested in them over the long run because sunlight is a great disinfectant. I apply that anywhere that it can be applied. As an idea of it, where I'm going to disagree with you on, we're going off on this tangent on it, is the idea that these processes, particularly these, federal hearings, are going to have much that can be done about that at this local level. So there are many things that are being directly impacted by their decisions, but these processes that you're wanting to talk about here are pretty far afield from what can have any kind of local impact because, outside from our elected representatives, which I don't believe are involved in either of these committees, making it pretty far afield. Do you get where I'm coming at with that about how this isn't exactly at this point in time a local subject?
Yes and no. Again, Supreme Court decisions affect all Americans, including El Paso.
Sure,
on the most
decisions.
Basic of issues, okay? Now, Clarence Thomas also took a $100,000 property deal from this Crow character who bought 3 of his properties, and his mother, Clarence Thomas's mother, lives in one of them and has been for years. And then there was the election cases, Now, this is about a coup on this government. That affects El Pasoans and all Americans. And Clarence Thomas's wife was involved in it. And he failed to recuse himself from cases that involved her. Okay, then we got Neil Gorsuch. He bought a property sale that he owned, and then he didn't disclose the sale. And this was from an executive by the name of Greg Turnberg, one of the country's biggest law firms, where these people go and argue cases in front of the court. That affects all Americans, including El Pasoans. And last but not least, John Roberts' wife became a legal recruiter, earning $10 million over a decade, referring lawyers that ended up arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court. So this has caused the Supreme Court's, trust in the Supreme Court to plummet. That affects the whole nation when there's no respect for the law at the highest levels. And Thomas should resign. And to deal with this, the court should be expanded by 3, because this is a court that has people on it who lied during their hearings and who were placed there by a president who lost the popular vote and then went on to govern as if he had won a mandate.
Again, if you're bringing in the other parts of it, again, the Supreme Court decisions absolutely affect us here. We're not talking about decisions right now, are we? We're talking about the process that may go into the decisions. And also, there have been a number of recent presidents that didn't win the popular vote and yet won the system we have in place. If you don't like the game and the way it's played, that's fine, but don't be saying that if you want to change that part of the Constitution, that would be the remedy to what you're talking about there. If you are saying that, well, I don't like the way it turned out in this case, therefore we shouldn't do it anymore, that's kind of saying, well, I didn't like the way this game is played, therefore I don't want to play this game anymore, and we shouldn't have played this game in the first place. Like, that's cart before the horse out of the barn, et cetera here. So, I mean, we're going to continue talking about the local things and the local issues that we can actually, like, get a handle on or are immediately affecting us here. I'm just saying there's that much to be done about that at the local level with these national investigations in the immediate sense of it. So thank you for the point, the call, for what it's worth and the local aspects of it that were there. We're trying to squeeze in one more quick phone call before the end of this program. We do have Frankie and Messia on the line with us right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us. Frankie, you there with us? I think we lost Frankie. All right. Well, we did lose you. Apologize for that, but we'll try again next time. But in any case, I guess we'll just go ahead and take that last break then and come back, tell you about what we're working on for you, as we have a lot of issues that are, again, being locally investigated and do have some local development going along with them, including, as was referenced, the whole AI situation. There's local stuff we're working at there. But in any case, let's go ahead and take that last break of this hour right now. So coming out of this, we'll tell you a little bit more about what we got coming up for you on the program, including some more in-depth statements and such. But anyway, stay tuned for that last bit with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An earlier accident, I-10 westbound at Reynolds has closed the Reynolds exit ramp. Traffic is slow there. Expect delays, 10-minute delays between McRae to the 54 Patriot. I-10 westbound at Chelsea, that earlier crash is cleared. Downtown, southbound Oregon is stop and go from East University down to Border Highway, 10-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's $3 breakfast deal. Wendy's $3 breakfast deal is your choice of bacon or sausage, egg and Swiss croissant, plus a small seasoned potato for just $3. Break your morning routine and get your $3 breakfast deal today. Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
Texting enrolls you in recurring automated marketing text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Leaving for the gym so early?
I'm ready to go.
Since you started taking Nugenix Total T, you've been acting like when we met in our 20s.
I feel like myself again. Lower testosterone after turning 40 slowed me down. Nugenix Total T has been a game changer for me.
What is it about Nugenix Total T that's different?
Well, it's a patented key ingredient called testofen. It boosts free and total testosterone to help you get back the drive and energy from your youth. It's backed by 5 clinical studies.
I've seen the huge difference it's made for you in the gym, at work, and in the bedroom.
I'm so glad I sent them a text for my complimentary bottle. Text PRIDE to 321321 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T. Nugenix is the #1 selling testosterone boosting brand at GNC and Walmart. Do it now, and we'll also send you a bottle of Nugenix Thermo X, our newest, most powerful fat burner ever. Absolutely free. Text PRIDE to 321321. That's PRIDE to 321321.
Weather and traffic info. You need it? We have it. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Of course my kid's in the right car seat. Well, I think he is.
Yeah, my kid's in a booster seat. He was ready to move up. He is ready, right?
Her car seat looks like the right size.
There are probably rules on when to move up to a booster seat, aren't there?
Rear facing, forward facing. I think I have it right.
Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Don't think you know. Know you know. Go to safercar.gov/the right seat.
I know my child's in the right car seat, or else I wouldn't get in the driver's seat.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. I want to thank everyone who did tune in and talk about the major parts of it here today and the major issues we've got going on locally. Yeah, Fridays around the corner, as it usually and pretty much almost always is, one of our most important days of the week anyway, particularly as it'll be the day before Election Day on this end, and just a whole lot more that goes along with it. And so we'll still do the free-for-all Friday thing. Don't worry. We'll not be totally focused on the election, though, I'm sure. But more than a few comments on it, if I may call that shot already. Some of the other things we're working on for you here. Still wanting to get more involving AI. So if I indulge that subject a little bit much and seemed out of form, it's because it is one we are working on for you all, particularly with some of the local aspects of it. So it is important, and I mean, a lot of important subjects here, but not necessarily outside of our usual focus, even if, again, we got a lot more developing in this region. Also, some things we're working on, hoping to get more, particularly from some of those organizations, local ones that have been involved with the Proposition K debate and putting things forward. Something I forgot to ask when we were discussing with Robbie Gray, among other things, is some of the recent opinion pieces that they've had on both sides of the Proposition K debate. They've had both some previous guests on this program, including Veronica Carbajal and also Lupe de la O, El Paso, chair of the El Paso County Republican Party. So either sides of that, as well as with Andrea Hutchins, CEO of the El Paso Chamber. So they've got a lot of dueling viewpoints back and forth when it comes to that. Also, what we're working on for you, again, as I kind of mentioned with a previous caller, with the Central Appraisal District. Of course, we are in appraisal update and therefore protest season. So I'm going to be talking about that and some of the future editions of the show. But next week, I fully expect to be a busy one. So as much as we are making plans for y'all, I have a full also expectation that they may just get blown out of the water and we have to roll with the punches that come those days. So we're still always working on things for you all. And in fact, on putting out some more information when it comes to how you can listen to us. I've often mentioned the different ways that you can tune in, but specifically, if you haven't already downloaded the iHeartRadio app, I would wholeheartedly encourage you to do so, because regardless of what's going on, as long as the station exists, it will be coming out that way. So if you want to make sure to get that, you can even get updates on what we have coming up for you on the show each and every week, some of the things we're working on the back end there. So make sure to download the iHeartRadio app on the smart device of your choice. But that's going to do it for us for today. We've covered a lot of ground, and we'll continue doing that as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So, of course, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about that specific interview, another What's the Deal with segment, school safety, and particularly arming teachers. We'll be delving further into that in one of our in-depth segments. So until then, until next time, I want you all to stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An earlier crash on I-10 westbound at Reynolds has closed the Reynolds exit off of I-10 westbound. I-10 westbound at Chelsea, a crash there from earlier is cleared. All lanes are back open, but there's still a backup on the 10 westbound from McRae to the Patriot. It's a 10-minute delay. Downtown, southbound Oregon, from East University down to Border Highway. Stop and go traffic, 10-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
We first opened about 10 years ago. We were small, just a few of us, but it was exciting. I always dreamt of having my own business. It was kind of slow at first, but things started picking up. We had big plans, but in our wildest dreams, we never thought we'd have this much work. Yeah, with so many businesses caught off guard by the storm, Reed Waste Management has never been busier.
What will become of your business after a disaster? Nearly 2/3 of businesses aren't prepared for an emergency, and 40% of businesses that experience a disaster never recover. Make an emergency plan now, before it's too late. For a free online tool that helps you develop an emergency plan to keep your business up and running should disaster strike, visit ready.gov/business. Brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the American Red Cross, and the Ad Council.
With an open channel,
I guess just try to keep channels open.
We welcome open-minded individuals.
I try to keep an open mind to all issues.
With open arms.
I think we need to always have our eyes open.
For open conversation. And when you open the iHeartRadio app, you open a whole new world. Wherever you are.
What should America do about immigration crisis?
I guess open the borders, but at the same time, check everyone that's coming in.
Open the gates.
A free download in the App Store or at kcsmradio.com.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690. Always just minutes away from the latest on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. States are bracing for the economic impact caused by the Hollywood writers' strike. The union and studios failed to agree on a new 3-year contract, and the Writers Guild of America announced the strike, effectively halting most productions. While appearing on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon last week, comedian Pete Davidson, an SNL alum, said he had a feeling he might not get a chance to host Saturday Night Live because of the strike.
It sucks because it just feeds my weird story I have in my head. Of course that would happen to me.
SNL is joining other shows that are going dark in solidarity with union members, including The Tonight Show, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and Jimmy Kimmel Live. Former President Trump is not going to testify. Trump lawyer Joe Tacopina told the U.S. District Court judge that his client will not testify in the trial for E. Jean Carroll, who claims she was raped by Trump in the 1990s. The FBI says there is a chance that the Texas man who shot and killed 5 of his neighbors may have run to Mexico. In a statement, the feds say they're working with law enforcement agencies across the country and across the border. Francisco Oropesa has been living in the country illegally. More than 250 Democratic Congress members are urging the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals to reverse a ruling suspending FDA approval of the abortion pill mifepristone.
In an amicus brief, lawmakers argued the Texas federal judge's decision poses a serious health risk to pregnant women and threatens access to other FDA-approved medications. The Supreme Court in April issued a stay, so the medication will remain available while the case works its way through the appeals process. Oral arguments in the appeal are set for May 17th. I'm Lisa Taylor.
The 2 top Republican congressional leaders will attend a White House meeting to discuss the debt ceiling next week. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. Legislation focused on environmental social governance in Florida is signed by Governor Ron DeSantis.
What it really is an attempt by elites to impose ideology through business institutions, financial institutions, and our economy writ large.
House Bill 3 is aimed at combating government and corporate activism at the state and local level. According to DeSantis, the bill codifies into law the fiduciary obligation to produce the best returns possible, not to be diverted by pursuing ideological agendas as it relates to investments of state money, the retirement system, and public funds. Critics say the move will hinder investment decision-making. Loneliness and mental well-being is in the Surgeon General's spotlight as Mental Health Awareness Month gets going. Natalie Rodriguez has more.
U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy says social media is a big positive influence for many, but for others, it's had and continues having a negative impact.
50 years ago, we didn't have the kind of technology we have today. We tended to know our neighbors more. We tended to invite our friends over for meals. We tended to spend time undistracted with each other. That's not the case now.
He says about 1 in 2 adults in America reported experiencing loneliness post-pandemic. In years past, that loneliness was experienced mainly by the elderly, but today he says more young people are suffering. Social connection, however, with others has shown to help, which is part of the framework rooted in a new report he released today.
The Tony Awards are out, and the musical Some Like It Hot is coming out on top. The hit musical scored 13 Tony nods, and the shows Anne Juliet, New York, New York, and Shucked each got 9 nominations apiece, followed by Kimberly Akimbo and Sweeney Todd, Into the Woods, A Doll's House, Ain't No Mo, Leopoldstadt, and Parade. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
Rover's Morning Glory.
It's The Woody Show.
It's Elliot in the Morning.
All of the once-in-a-lifetime events.
iHeartRadio Music Festival.
All of the best access, free curated playlists.
It's everything that rocks.
All the great podcasts for every interest.
This is Freddie Prinze Jr. from the Wrestling with Freddie podcast.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome. All of your favorite superstars.
This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Download the absolutely free iHeartRadio app now.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690, KTSM, an iHeart radio station.
No word in the English language is less convincing than probably.
Are you sure we should get matching tattoos on our first date?
Sure. We'll probably stay together.
Probably? It's been 23 minutes since I ate. I can probably swim.
You should wait 30 minutes.
Okay, now tell me what to do. Cannonball! Cramp! Oh, I have a cramp.
I can probably hit the green from here.
Probably.
Can I get a mulligan?
Ready to go?
Hey, are you sure you're okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm pretty sober. Yeah, I'm probably okay. Probably okay isn't okay, especially when it comes to drinking and driving. If you're drinking, call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I spent a lot of time in the garage, but even more time in the rain and mud. In 95, I helped tow your moving trailer. And in 09, it was sparks from me, your chains, dragging behind your truck that accidentally started a wildfire.
Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com, brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
News Radio 690 KTSM.